We're going to kick things off with our leg session. So I did the session a couple of days ago. It's quite a difficult session. I would say it's more on the advanced spectrum. So how it's working today, the focal point is obviously going to be our legs. However, we're focusing on power generation, we're focusing on speed, and we're also focusing on hypertrophy. So getting those legs bigger, faster, and stronger. The first exercise is going to be our barbell back squat. So as you can see, I'm performing the back squat. So I'm just going to go through some coaching points when performing this movements in order to make sure that you're hitting the right muscle groups and you're not compensating in any way. So the first movement, the first thing that you need to make sure your feet are shoulder width apart. Okay, this might vary depending on your what's known as morphology, so the difference between your mechanical tendencies in your body, so your femur length, etc. So the feet are shoulder width apart. We've got what's known as a posterior tilt, so your pelvis is turned under. Your scapula, your shoulder blades need to be depressed, so pulled backwards, and they need to be pulled down. So imagine you're trying to get your shoulder blades into your pocket. Your elbows need to be tucked into your rib cage, and your lats must be engaged. When you're going down, you need to make sure, or before you go down, you need to make sure you inhale and expand your core against your rib cage, just so you've got a nice controlled element there. So on that descent, you want to make sure you're really controlled. Your weight is in your heels, and you're maintaining your core at the bottom position. On that way up, you need to drive your weight through your heels. Your head must stay forward throughout, and you must push the floor away from you. Hips turn under as you get to the top. So the next movement in this sequence is going to be what's known as an anti-rotation drill. So when using an anti-rotation drill, it supports what's known as your transverse abdominis, or your core. It can be really beneficial when performing movements like the squat because it maintains the integrity of your spine throughout the movement. So that's why I've chosen to implement it as an accessory movement. So our next focus is going to be on what is known as the barbell sumo deadlift. So with the barbell sumo deadlift, the rationale, the reason behind it is to develop lower body strength. We're focusing on lifting the weight as fast as possible whilst maintaining structural integrity. The sumo deadlift is a very similar movement pattern to that of the squat. So I prefer the sumo over a conventional deadlift because it puts less emphasis on the lower back. It means you can sit your hips a little bit lower and drive your weight through your heels whilst maintaining a nice upright torso. So when performing this movement, you want to make sure your feet are outside shoulder width. Okay, I don't go too wide. Okay, I'm trying to almost get into a squat stance or a 90-degree position to lift off. My weight is centered back into my heels. My shoulder blades are depressed, like as we talked about in that squat before. My elbows are driven back towards my hips. My core is engaged. I'm going to push the floor away from me and stand up, rolling my shoulder blades back and snapping my hips through. Secondary movement is going to follow what is known as a PAP principle. Okay, post-activation potentiation. So essentially what this is using a heavy compound followed by a light plyometric, in this case our dumbbell jumps, in order to increase motor engagement or increase the muscular engagement, therefore getting more out of the movement. So we're going to move on to the second block of this session. The second block, the focal point is less on the more compound movements. It's going to be more of an isolatory focus. So we're going to be working on the glutes and hamstrings specifically in order to increase their hypertrophy, so their size, and also athletic ability. So to kick things off, we're going to go for our banded Romanian deadlifts. So with the Romanian deadlift, it's a heavy focal point on the hamstrings. So you're pushing the hips to the back of the room, loading the torso out of horizontal position and distributing all your weight back onto the heels. When you get into that bottom position, you want to be nice and controlled. You're going to drive the torso up and squeeze the glutes through. The secondary focus is going to be our single leg dumbbell drops. So the reason behind using the single leg dumbbell drop is it's a very good unilateral stability movement. So for those of you who know me or will have followed me on Instagram or whatever, will probably know that I had an ankle reconstruction as a result of a rugby injury. So what I'm trying to do is really sort of increase my ability to control force that is placed onto the body that is almost unexpected. So it's almost a reactive control that I'm trying to work on. So he's still working through the hamstrings, however, it's causing that stability to be reinforced throughout the movement. So moving swiftly on. What better way to target the glutes than the barbell hip thruster? There's going to be two options on this one. The first is going to be more power generation. So we're looking at smaller working sets with a higher weight load. Okay, with the velocity or the speed of movement we're trying to keep up to generate that power and add that stimulus. The secondary focus is going to be more of a hypertrophy focus. So we're adding moderately heavy weight. We're trying to get as much engagement and as much fatigue in the glute as possible, going for extended sets of about 12 reps. Okay, making sure the glutes are fully engaging on that way up. A good little tip in terms of form is you want to tuck your chin into your chest and try and roll your shoulder blades off. So the bar or the bench is loaded onto your mid-thoracic or your mid-shoulder blade. We're going to then go into our single leg hip extension. This is a good accessory movement, I find, in order to increase sort of sprinting capability. As you can see, it's a very similar movement pattern to that. The sprinting, you're shooting that leg backwards, squeezing the glute all the way through and trying to propel the ground away from you. A very good accessory for this movement is then going to be our wall sprints. So now that we've generated that extension or that tension in that plane of movement, so the kicking back and power generation, we can then translate into quite a ballistic controlled movement. So this is going to be our wall sprints. So it's quite a volatile movement. We're trying to sprint as fast as possible, switching the feet all the way through and drawing the knee all the way up to really emphasize that sprinting movement mechanic. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the session. Until next time.